Hey everybody, welcome to the Modern Witch Podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things spirituality, Akashic records, tarot readings, mediumship, crystals, and I share with you guys all the different spiritual and healing modalities that I am working with in order to experience healing and in order to connect with God. So we're going to talk about a lot of really just different unconventional ways to connect with God in this podcast. So I hope you guys enjoy. This episode is going to start our Akashic Record series, but it's actually going to be a journey of how I came across the Akashic Records, how I ended up reading the Akashic Records, and how I did many things before I found the Akashic Records. So I'm going to take you guys through my spiritual journey, including how I went from being a corporate girly all the way to now being a spiritual healer, Akashic Records reader, medium, and soon to be Reiki practitioner. So I'm excited to share the journey with you guys. So my name's Madison. I am 31. I live in North Carolina, and I have grown up most of my life in North Carolina, and I've also grown up most of my life with spiritual, intuitive, mediumship gifts. So as a kid, I can remember connecting with ghost spirits, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought everybody could do that until I got to about the age where I realized that some people were talking about, people who had the abilities that I had in a way that was negative. I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, so being a medium or a tarot reader or, any of those sorts of things was sort of frowned upon. And I really wrestled with it for a long time. Like, why do I feel like I have these gifts, but then I'm a part of this religion that, doesn't, realize the value in these gifts? It's this big back and forth. But ultimately, I know that I believe in God, and I know that He's there, and I know that He's helping me. And I know that somehow it has to be all interconnected. I just can't quite figure out how. So I'm going through, honestly, just years of kind of battling this in my teen years. And finally, it got to the point where I just asked for my spiritual gifts to just be removed or turned off, or whatever verbiage you want to use, just because I didn't know how to use them. I thought people would think they were weird, just all these things. And so then for all of my 20s, I actually worked on climbing the corporate ladder. I got a master's degree in HR. I had the cool corporate job. I did all the things. I got married. I got divorced. I, had companies that were bought and sold. I went through just like a lot of signs that what I was doing for a living wasn't aligned. And despite the fact that I had all these degrees and certifications and things, I didn't feel this sense of fulfillment that I once felt whenever I first started doing HR. So now I'm in this position where I have now lost my father due to COVID. And after I lost my father, all my medium abilities came back, like basically in a day. And all of a sudden, I am able to communicate with my father as well as other lost or loved ones that have passed. And I have all these crazy gifts that it's almost like the day my dad died, they like turned back on. And so now I'm working in the corporate world. I'm feeling really unfulfilled. I don't know what to do because now I have all these medium gifts and these gifts that I thought I had when I was a kid. I now know they're like real, and they're stronger than ever before. But I'm doing HR, and I'm kind of afraid to tell people about these gifts. And I also feel like I have, some kind of intuitive psychic moments and just different things like that where I have visions or dreams of things and then those things come to pass. Just a lot of like intuitive spiritual downloads, connections with God, all these crazy things that happen. And so these things, about 2 years after these gifts came back to life, I got sober. And so I've been sober now for about 2 years. It'll actually be 2 years at the end of September. And so once I got sober, all these spiritual gifts were like magnetized times 10, because now I'm seeking them out. Now I'm trying to connect with the God of my understanding because I'm in AA and I'm working a program. I'm doing all these things to connect with God. And as I'm doing these things, I'm realizing I have more and more spiritual gifts. And during this time, I stumble upon the Akashic Records. Actually, a girl that I followed on Instagram is an Akashic Records reader, and then she starts talking about it. I'm fascinating. I start listening to all these Akashic Records podcasts, YouTubes. I start reading books. I start taking courses. I start tapping into my own Akashic Records. And about the time that I'm starting to also start doing Akashic Records work, I realized that for a long time, my medium abilities, I thought that my medium abilities were only for me. And by that, I mean, I thought I only had the ability to connect with people that I knew in this life that had passed, and that I had this gift ultimately to like help me heal from all this grief that I had experienced in my early adulthood. And then I go to a retreat actually with this girl that I first learned about the Akashic Records from. Her name's Anna Grace Newell, AG University, if you want another great podcast to listen to. And so I go to her retreat, and it's all about like tapping into the Akashic Records, meditation, spirituality, somatic work, like all this cool stuff, right? And on the first night of this retreat, I have my first experience where I realized that my medium abilities go beyond just me being able to connect with my family members. I realize in this experience that I have, kind of in like a deep state of meditation, that I am actually able to connect with other people's past family members, and I'm almost able to act as a messenger for them. So I'm going to tell you guys about this experience. I am in Costa Rica. I have this roommate named Madeline. I don't think she'll mind me sharing this story. And both of her parents have passed. And I am in this deep meditative state the first night we're there, and my dad comes to me, which is like a pretty common thing that happens to me in meditation, that I'm able to connect with different angels or spiritual guides, or, you know, kind of whatever verbiage resonates with you. And so as I'm connecting with him, I realize that he's brought two people for me. And the two people that he brought for me are my roommate Madeline's parents. And he brought her parents to me, and they had a message that they wanted me to convey to her. Ooh, I have chills talking about this. I haven't really told this story to many people, like my mom and like my boyfriend, that's it. And her, of course. And so they bring me this message, and I'm like, that was weird. And I do nothing with this information for like the next 3 days besides be like, this girl's gonna think I'm crazy if I'm like, hey, actually, I'm low-key a medium, and my dad, who's one of my spirit guides, came to me and brought me your parents, and they have a message for you, and I want to give that message to you. Like, I'm like, what? But like the whole time we're there, all these like one-on-one like times that I'm in with Madeline, it's almost like they're like showing up like, hello, tell her our message, and I'm like, oh! So finally, the last night I get the courage. I'm like, hey, so I have this crazy thing that I want to tell you. And I basically tell her, hey, like, I realized I had these medium abilities. I thought they were only to connect me with my past relatives, but now I've had this experience where my dad brought to me your parents. Here's what they were wearing. Here's how they were dressed. That resonated with her. I'm like, here's this message. That resonated with her. And I was like, wait, am I supposed to, is this gift more than just for me? Like, am I supposed to use this gift to close like the grief loophole that a lot of people have open, that I was able to close for myself through my own medium abilities? Am I supposed to use these to help other people? So I'm wrestling with this now, because I didn't know that I had this ability to connect with people outside of people that I knew in the human world. I didn't know that I could connect with spirits that I'd never met before, if that makes sense. So now I realize this, and a whole new world's opened up. And at this time, I'm really deep into like reading my own Akashic Records and tapping into those to try to figure out what I'm supposed to do as far as like a business goes. Like I'm really in deep with all these different spiritual practices, but I'm still really wrestling with them, because I, at this time, the God of my understanding, back to AA terms, is what I perceive to be the Christian God. So I'm wrestling, because I'm like, I know I'm a medium. I know I can use these skills and these abilities that I have for good to help people. And during this time, I start to have other experiences where other people's family members are brought to me, and I have other messages to pass along to different people. So I accidentally end up doing medium readings on largely people I know. And so I start to realize, like, okay, like I'm like a full-blown medium. I can tap into the Akashic records, but like, what about God? Like, is God mad at me that I have these abilities? Is God, like, I don't know. So I stumbled upon this book, perfect timing, as is everything. It's called Conversations with God. And it's basically this guy, he starts a dialogue with God, and him and God are just unpacking in this dialogue a lot of really deep, profound human questions about spirituality, about religion, about heaven and hell, all these things, right? And basically, through reading this book, I got a different perception of God than the perception of God that I had being raised in the Southern Baptist Church. And this perception of God that I now have is the perception that there is one God, but God loves us no matter what. We're all eternal souls, eternal beings. There's no hell. We're all just, progressing from one life to the next. And while I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, I also believe that God sent, other messengers besides Jesus to teach us really profound things in this lifetime. And so now I am to the point where I've had this spiritual awakening. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's okay for me to have these gifts. Like God doesn't hate me. God doesn't think these gifts are wrong. Like they go through a lot of medium abilities, psychic abilities. Are these things wrong? And God's like, no, these are things I give you. These are gifts. These are spiritual things that I've given you guys, that anything you guys can't understand, you think there's something wrong with it. And so since you guys can't understand some of these spiritual gifts, a lot of people think that there's things wrong with them. And it was like the permission that I needed to be like, oh yeah, I'm a medium. I'm an Akashic Records reader. I also want to learn Reiki and start doing tarot readings. And so immediately I just like delve into all of it. I am doing the Akashic Records reading courses and books on how to start reading other people's Akashic Records. I'm connecting in these Facebook groups to start doing practice readings on other people. I decide what Reiki course that I want to do to ultimately become a Reiki master. I start practicing Reiki on myself. I start learning how to read tarot cards. I start incorporating crystals and essential oils and incense into meditation. I just unlocked this entire new world that I had no idea that existed. And I'm like the most like relaxed, peaceful, happy, calm, content, but excited version of me that I've ever been. So now I'm taking you guys on a new journey. If you followed me on podcasts before, I talked a lot about Christianity. Now we're going to move from Christianity. We're going to talk about spirituality. Spirituality is not a religion. Spirituality is not a list of things you do or don't have to do to get certain results. Spirituality is just the things that resonate with you to connect you with God, to connect you with your higher power, to connect you with source, to connect you with your angels, your spirit guides, whatever that looks like. And we're going to talk about all of it on this podcast. I am going to share with you guys a lot about the Akashic Records. I'm going to share with you guys what they are, how they work, and how my readings work. I've now gotten to the point that I've done quite a few readings for people's Akashic Records. It's been so much fun. I've started to do some tarot readings. I'm doing my first Reiki session today. Actually, after I record this podcast, I'm doing my first Reiki session on another person. And I also have like a website where I've been doing blogging and like reels and just different things like that to just share all of this knowledge that I've been learning with you guys. Right now on TikTok, I'm doing a crystal series where I'm just unpacking different crystals that I use, how I use them. Next week, I think I'm going to do a color magic series where I unpack color magic. And if you're not familiar with color magic is basically wearing or using colors to bring extra magic to your life. So today I'm dressed in all green, and I specifically picked all green because today I am doing my first Reiki session. I am recording my first podcast for a podcast that I hope to be a really long-term, just amazing add to my business. And with those things, I want prosperity, I want abundance, I want the right clients, I want to connect with the right people, I want to make money, I want to be fulfilled. All of those things are associated with wearing green. So as I'm going in to do these things, I'm intentionally like, oh, I'm wearing green because I really want to make sure that I'm bringing in prosperity and abundance and fulfillment into my life, into my everyday, and into these new spiritual practices that I'm working on. So this is just a little intro episode. I will talk more about the Akashic Records next week on next week's episode. It's just going to be an Akashic Records 101 episode. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit more about what the Akashic Records are, how I access them, how I do readings, what sort of things you can find in there, and we are going to go deep. It's going to be fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'll be back next week, and as always, happy healing, babes.